Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital spoilers allude that the show may be gearing up for Drew Kane's redemption stunner. Could Jen Sidwell be the answer to G.H. Penn's Drew problem? Drew has come an absolute eminence to society at this point, so suckers are left fuming every time he's on screen. Just when it seems like Drew can't sink any lower, he finds some way to prove he's an indeed worse character than observers allowed. Still, some scenes in the November 19th occasion could allude at effects ultimately turning around for Drew, who got an earful from Jordan Ashford and Laura Collins in the Ultimates office. Jordan lashed out at Drew for not minding about the citizens of Port Charles and plotted to understand what happened to him. Drew's metamorphosis into this trim, vengeful person easily didn't make sense to Jordan. Laura kept that theme going after suggesting that if she lost her mayoral spot, it'd be over to Drew to cover the people of PC. Drew inaptly allowed. Laura had faith in him, but she was simply appealing to the man he used to be. There was a lot of focus on Minatory Sidwell in the midst of all this, so Drew flashed back to when Sidwell hovered him. Sidwell has made it clear that Drew needs to stay in line, so Drew obviously doesn't like being stuck under his thumb. It's intriguing that G.H. Pens are pressing the negative changes in Drew and maybe trying to show him how far he's fallen. Drew's getting monuments that he wasn't always this awful Joe and doesn't have to stay on this terrible path. Drew could choose the path to redemption rather, especially if he decides to outwit Sidwell and deliver his punishment. It'd work in Drew's favor if he could find some way to end Sidwell's power over him. That'd be good for Drew tete-a-tete. But bringing down Sidwell would also be good for the people of Port Charles. Drew is doing Sidwell's dirty work and might have an advantage since he's part of the inner circle. It'll be a great twist if Drew's redemptive road involves going after Sidwell and proving perhaps there's a hint of the man he used to be in there later each. General Hospital spoilers say some stunning Drew news could be brewing, so stay tuned for updates on any redemption tactics that might be in store. General Hospital spoilers reveal the week of November 24th to 28th will be explosive, with Drew Kane bending down on one knee to propose to Willow Tate, formerly again. Could this big moment detect a big memory for the nurse? Drew proposes in the same spot he was shot. General Hospital exercise filmland for coming week reveal that Drew will propose to Willow in the veritably same spot he was shot at. Is this a coexistence, or is this leading up to the moment G.H. suckers have been staying for the big reveal girding Drew's firing? Why would G.H. Pens choose that spot, of all spots, to have Drew propose to Willow? At the end of the day, she's not only PCPD's top suspect, she's also one for suckers. Still, nothing has been verified yet. Willow Tate's dead theory. When Willow stalked Daisy Gilmore, numerous suckers had a proposition that she had dissociative identity complaint. After all, Willow's meltdown when she set up out she lost sole guardianship of Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos in the courtroom was a major turning point for the character. She had to be rehabilitated, and the creepiness of running both Daisy and Sasha Gilmore out of Port Charles, without any guilt, was fully out of Willow's character. Still, shooting someone is also way out of character for Willow, too. After all, the idea of Willow shooting Drew in a premeditated fashion seems outrageous, but so did stalking Daisy. It's important to flash back that Willow was no way brazened with or faced any impacts over what she did to Daisy because of a lack of evidence. Could it be that Willow has no memory of these conduct because she's suffering from dead? If Drew proposes in the spot where he was shot, could this spark a memory of Willow shooting her former fiancé? November sweeps is each about stunner moments, so suckers eventually learning who shot the Solon, and that major reveal could go down during the week of November 24th, is veritably presumptive for the last week of Reach's month. Who do you suppose shot Drew? The fictional world of Port Charles is a crucible where characters are perpetually tested, their moral fortitude forged in the fires of betrayal, love, and vengeance. Few narratives currently unfolding on ABC's General Hospital embody this tumultuous dynamic more than the precipitous fall of Drew Kane. Once a character rooted in a sense of honor and resilience, Drew has, in the eyes of many viewers, devolved into an insufferable and morally compromised figure, a puppet for the shadowy powers that threaten the very fabric of the city. However, the latest spoilers suggest that the narrative tides may be turning. We are witnessing the nascent stages of a profound character reckoning, a baptism by fire that begins not with water, but with a volatile cocktail of encouraging words, angry threats, and an earth-shattering revelation. The identity of his own shooter is none other than Willow Tate. This confluence of events is not merely dramatic coincidence, it is the carefully laid groundwork for what could be Drew Cain's most shocking and hard-fought redemption arc. The unraveling of a hero, Drew Cain as Port Charles's modern menace. To understand the potential for redemption, one must first appreciate the depths to which Drew has sunk. The fan frustration is palpable and well-founded. The man who once navigated his life with a degree of principled determination has been replaced by a smug, vindictive, and politically avaricious doppelganger. His actions are no longer driven by a desire to protect but by a hunger for power and a need to appease his corporate master, Jens Sidwell. This transformation has not gone unnoticed by the pillars of the Port Charles community, whose recent confrontations serve as the first crucial droplets in his impending baptism. The scenes from the November 19 episode, featuring blistering critiques from both Police Commissioner Jordan Ashford and Mayor Laura Collins, were a masterclass in verbal intervention. Jordan's outrage was not merely professional disagreement, it was a personal, heartfelt plea from a woman who has known Drew in his better days. Her struggle to comprehend his metamorphosis mirrors the audience's own confusion. "What happened to you?" is a question echoing in living rooms across the country. Her lashing out was unnecessary, public shaming, a stark reflection of the man he has become held up against the man he was. Laura Collins, ever the diplomatic stateswoman, employed a different, yet equally potent, strategy. By suggesting that Drew would need to protect Port Charles if she lost her mayoral seat, she was not expressing confidence in the present-day Drew. On the contrary, she was making a deliberate, poignant appeal to the ghost of Drew Cain past. She was speaking to the echo of the honorable Navy SEAL, the devoted brother, the man who understood sacrifice. Drew's misinterpretation of her words as a vote of confidence was a tragic indicator of how far his self-awareness has eroded. Laura's words were not encouragement for his current path, but a challenge, a whispered invitation to remember his core identity. This is the first form of encouragement, a reminder of one's former glory, a benchmark against which current failings are painfully measured. The puppet master strings, the sinister shadow of Jens Sidwell. Looming over Drew's every decision is the omnipresent threat of Jens Sidwell. The spoilers focus on Drew's flashback to Sidwell's threats is a critical narrative device. It serves to remind the audience that while Drew's actions are reprehensible, he is not operating in a vacuum. He is a man trapped, his ambition and fear intertwining to create a gilded cage. The flashback is not meant to elicit sympathy for his present behavior, but to provide context for the internal conflict that must inevitably erupt. This highlights the central theme of angry threats that defines Drew's current existence. He lives under the dual threats of Sidwell's corporate wrath and the growing disdain of his peers. However, the most interesting twist proposed by the spoilers is the possibility that Drew could use his position within the inner circle to his advantage. Redemption is rarely born from comfortable circumstances. It is often forged in the heart of the enemy's camp. For Drew to truly atone, he must do more than simply walk away. He must actively dismantle the machine he helped empower. A redemptive path that involves Drew strategically outmaneuvering Sidwell, delivering the corporate raider his well-deserved comeuppance, would be a masterstroke from the writers. It would allow Drew to utilize the very cunning and ruthlessness he has learned in his descent as tools for a greater good. Bringing down Sidwell would simultaneously liberate him personally and serve as a monumental act of public service for the citizens of Port Charles he has so thoroughly neglected. This would be the ultimate penance and the most meaningful first step on his long road back. The trigger point, a proposal laced with unseen peril. Just as the narrative begins to pivot toward this potential for internal change, the spoilers unleash a bombshell that will irrevocably alter the landscape: Drew's proposal to Willow Tate. The setting alone, the very spot where he was gunned down, transforms a moment of romantic tradition into a scene dripping with psychological suspense. This is no simple coincidence, it is a deliberate, symbolic trigger planted by the writers. A baptism, in its most essential form, is a ritual of death and rebirth. The individual is symbolically submerged, dying to an old self, and rises anew. Drew, kneeling on the ground where he nearly died, is unconsciously reenacting the first part of this ritual. He is physically positioning himself in a place of profound vulnerability, revisiting the site of his greatest physical trauma. For the audience, this location screams of unfinished business. It is a constant, visual reminder that the central mystery of who shot Drew remains the specter haunting his entire storyline. The proposal itself becomes a multifaceted act. It is Drew's attempt to build a new future, even as he unknowingly kneels atop the buried shrapnel of his past. The shooter revealed the unthinkable truth about Willow Tate. The spoilers point compellingly toward Willow Tate as the culprit. This revelation, while shocking, is not without its own twisted internal logic, especially when viewed through the lens of the dissociative identity disorder theory that has surrounded the character. Willow's descent into darkness following the loss of custody of Wiley and Amelia was a jarring character turn. Her calculated stalking of Daisy Gilmore and her ruthless campaign against Sasha Gilmore were actions completely anathema to the gentle, compassionate nurse Port Charles thought it knew. The critical element here is the lack of consequences. Because she was never formally confronted or held accountable for her actions against Daisy due to a lack of evidence, that dark potential within her was never integrated or resolved, it was merely suppressed. The idea of a premeditated shooting may seem a bridge too far, but so did the notion of Willow as a relentless stalker. If she is suffering from it provides a plausible, psychologically complex explanation. In a dissociative state, a person can commit acts of extreme violence for which their primary personality has no memory and bears no conscious responsibility. Therefore, Drew's proposal in that specific location is not just a trigger for his own memory, but a potential seismic trigger for Willow's fractured psyche. The romantic pressure of the moment, combined with the overwhelming sensory and emotional recall of the location, could shatter the walls separating her identities. Imagine the scene: Drew on one knee, offering a ring and a future, while Willow is suddenly assaulted by fragmented, horrific images of smoke, the sound of a gunshot, and the sight of him falling. Her reaction would not be one of joyful acceptance, but of abject terror and confusion. This would be the moment of baptismal unveiling, the brutal, terrifying truth rising from the depths. The tripartite path to salvation. The convergence of these three elements, the encouraging words from Laura and Jordan, the angry threats from Sidwell and his own circumstances, and the baptismal revelation of the shooting, creates the perfect storm for Drew's character rebirth. The reveal of Willow as the shooter is Drew's symbolic immersion. It is a catastrophic, humiliating, and painful death of his current reality. His entire world, his political career, his romantic relationship, his perceived control, would implode in an instant. The man who thinks he has everything, kneeling to propose, would learn that the woman he loves is the one who tried to kill him. This is a baptism of fire and shrapnel, a total destruction of the ego he has so carefully constructed. From the ashes of this revelation, a new understanding must be forged. In the wake of this shattering truth, the earlier words of Laura and Jordan will cease to be mere criticisms and become a lifeline. Laura's appeal to the man he used to be will resonate with newfound clarity. When everything else is stripped away, his power, his relationship, his pride, all that will be left is the fundamental question of his character. Will he seek vengeance against a mentally ill Willow, further cementing his descent? Or will he, in his own broken state, recognize the brokenness in her? This is where true encouragement lies, in the opportunity to choose compassion over vengeance, to become the protector Laura challenged him to be, even for the person who wronged him. The Sidwell problem does not disappear with this personal tragedy. In fact, it may intensify. Sidwell will see a vulnerable and publicly humiliated Drew as a liability, likely increasing the pressure and threats. This external antagonism, however, can now be met with a renewed purpose. Fighting Sidwell is no longer about personal ambition or freedom, it becomes part of his redemption. Protecting Port Charles from Sidwell's machinations and protecting a fragile Willow from both legal repercussions and her own mind could become the noble cause that redeems him. The angry threats become the anvil upon which his new resolve is hammered into shape. A redemption forged in truth. The potential for this storyline is immense. A Drew Kane who is humbled, who has lost everything, and who chooses to fight for something larger than himself is a Drew Kane audiences could learn to root for again. His redemption cannot be easy or swift. It must be a grueling process of atonement. He must grapple with the pain of Willow's betrayal, the responsibility of understanding her illness, and the Herculean task of taking down Sidwell without the armor of his former arrogance. The week of November 24th to 28th is poised to be a watershed moment for General Hospital. The reveal of Willow Tate as Drew's shooter is not an endpoint, it is the violent, chaotic, and necessary beginning of his true baptism. It is the moment the ground gives way beneath him, forcing him to shed the hollow man he became and discover if anything of the hero he once was remains. In the crucible of this truth, fueled by the encouraging echoes of his past and besieged by the threats of his present, Drew Kane may finally begin the long, arduous, and compelling journey back to the light.